Donny for his.
All right, let me do strengths.
Eyewitness. Loosen up the shoulders.
Yeah.
Talk about some centers.
All right, Donny. Welcome to our episode of Boom or Bust, the draft show. Max Chadwick alongside Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons, going over Donny's boy, Tyler Linderbaum, the Iowa center. Scouting report on him, strengths, weaknesses, player comp, ranking, team fit, so much more. I wanted to say that, this is because all of you are commenting Tyler Linderbaum, but I'm not convinced that it's not just Donny. With many different YouTube burners or whatever, just commenting.
I have a lot of burner accounts commenting.
Yeah, like there are some guys who were like, oh, like this guy's being mentioned a lot. This guy, and like Tyler Linderbaum is mentioned a ton. And Donny, being from Iowa, being a big Iowa fan, we're like, this is definitely Donny asking for these. But before we start the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Please turn on notifications as well. Be sure to follow our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Boom or Bust Draft. We're on YouTube. Anywhere you get your podcast, check out their merch store below. And like I mentioned in the previous video, please follow each of us on Twitter as well, at Pick and Spreads, at Nick with Sports, at Chad_Maxwick for me, as well as following the Boomer Bust account. Of course, follow Donny on TikTok too, the by far the most popular account we have at Boomer Bust right now, the Pick and Spreads TikTok. Make sure you guys check that out as well. Don't haze Donny though. Be nice to Donny in the comment section. You get there's
a
hashtag be nice to Donny.
Hashtag say Boomer Bust sent me, and I just tell you, Donny, that your hair looks great today, or something like that. Just tell him like that in the comment section. So let's go over Tyler Linderbaum, which is the key for Nick to start playing the music, as we mentioned in the last video. Tyler Linderbaum now, he's a senior, 6'3", 290 pounds. Former 3-star recruit, number 409 overall. And how about this? The number 28 defensive tackle coming out in 2018, coming out of Iowa, from Iowa. And he's a 2-time AP All-American. So, Nick, you and I can leave now. Donny, what are the strengths that you see with Tyler Linderbaum?
Okay, so I've been warming up for this ever since I joined Boomer Bust, so let's get this underway. So Tyler Linderbaum is the best pass protector in this draft. Tyler Linderbaum is the best run blocker in this draft. Tyler Linderbaum has the best hand placement of all the offensive linemen in this draft. Tyler Linderbaum might be the best offensive lineman in space in this draft. He might be the most athletic in this draft. It's close with Evan Neal. It's close, but he has an argument there. Everything he does, he makes it look easy. His footwork is good, I'd assume. It's kind of weird to see what's good footwork for a center. It's kind of the one position where I'm like, is that good footwork? Is that bad? I just assume it's good because he's just that good at playing football. So I'm just going to assume he has good footwork. He was graded as the number 1 player in college football this year, above Aiden Hutchinson, above Will Anderson, above anybody in the country. He had the highest grade according to Pro Football Focus. I believe it was a 95.4, which is just crazy.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy. That might be the highest graded center in college football history. It might be. He was also graded as the number 1 center in 2020, and he was graded as the number 5 center when he first played the position. And like Max said, he switched over to defensive tackle because for the majority of his life, he was playing defensive tackle whenever he was in high school. Actually, it's funny. He was his high school is one of my rivals for my high school, so that's kind of funny. But played defensive tackle, switched to offensive line, and became a monster. I mean, this guy's Quentin Nelson playing center for a reason. He's a generational prospect at center. There's nothing he can't do. He's the best pass protector in this draft. If he was an offensive tackle and had the size of an offensive tackle, he'd be the best player in this draft, and I don't know if it would relatively be close. I know that may sound biased, but just watch this guy on tape. Just go look at his PFF. If you don't like watching tape, go look at his PFF grade. Go look at his 94.
They do it for you.
Yes, 95.4 grade for a center. The highest graded player in college football was a center from Iowa. So the real question is, what is not good about Tyler Linderbaum?
We're going to have to delve into that later, aren't we? Yeah, I mean, tough to follow that, I suppose. I actually completely agree with Donnie. I think if he was like 320 pounds and playing left tackle, he probably would be the number one player in this draft class.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, he's playing center, or maybe not. Unfortunately, because center memes are hilarious, and I love the idea of everyone just wanting to draft a center really high, which is fantastic. Gotta get some support behind that position because I think it actually is more valuable than guard. You can have an offensive line. It's just like center and two tackles. We saw this with the Eagles this year. Great center, two tackles that were playing really well, obviously, and then they just had like their fourth string guards, and they're like, well, it doesn't matter. We're gonna run for 7 yards a carry, and it worked because their center is obviously a Hall of Famer, and Jason Kelsey. Tyler Linderbaum is pound for pound. I said Garrett Wilson last video, pound for pound the strongest player in the draft. Well, the one player that might be up against him is Tyler Linderbaum. One thing that Donnie, I'm surprised didn't mention is the fact that he beat Tristan Wirfs in wrestling. I
was going to mention that. I just forgot about it. He Tristan Wirfs in wrestling. And the crazy thing is, I was actually there, and I didn't even mention it. I was there when it happened, and I can't believe I didn't mention that. Yeah, beat Tristan Wirfs. Yeah, because one of my friends who I was hanging out with who went to Linderbaum school, we were a bit younger, of course, but we watched him wrestle. And obviously I didn't really know who these guys were at the time because I was just there supporting my friend's brother. And then boom, like it was just crazy. Just now to see both of these guys are going to be like Linderbaum's going to be a superstar in the NFL. Like this guy's chance to bust is extremely, extremely low. And Tristan Wirfs is already the best right tackle in football. So yeah, I can't believe I didn't mention that.
Wirfs is just an athletic freak as well. So you're talking about like a 290-pound. This is a guy, he plays defensive tackle. Somehow he's like not good at defensive tackle. I don't know how that worked out because I just feel like as good of an athlete he is, it should have worked out. So they move him to center, and it takes like a year for him to just be like a technical marvel at the position as well. Like outside of everything else we talked about with his athleticism, with his power, his movement ability is amazing. We had a tweet earlier where we were like, this guy might run a 4.3, which is kind of joking, but like, might he run in like the 4.8s, like 4.7s, like something ridiculous like that? Because this guy, like pulling, getting to the second level, his vision's ridiculous. His hip fluidity for a center is like for most centers is like, if it's existed, that's like a good thing. Like this guy, like literally, like looks like he could be a tight end. Like he's ridiculous. And when Donnie says like he has a very low bust potential, and I think I've said earlier in videos that Kyle Hamilton is like the highest floor prospect in this draft. It might actually be Tyler Linderbaum.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned it all, really. I'm going to go back to my trusty Bruce Feldman's Freaks list, number 10 on that Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. Okay, this one, like, I know that they're saying like 4.3 stuff in high school. Like, that was crazy. This is kind of crazy to me. So he ran last year, I believe, a 1.55 10-yard split, which, as we know, is a very, very important number for offensive linemen because obviously a 40-yard dash, like how many times is an offensive lineman going to run 40 yards downfield? Like not often. 10-yard split, when they're pulling, man, that's important. How quick can you get to second level? He ran a 1.55. The average for a center, 1.8. So significantly above average for that. Yeah. He's like, only 0.25 was only 10 yards as well. So every single fraction of a second is a big difference. How about this, though? So 1.55 average for him. The average for a wide receiver is 1.57.
What more can you ask for, folks?
His 10-yard split is faster than the average wide receiver. That is freaking absurd. That is absurd. Now, of course, he's not faster than a receiver because, obviously 40 yards downfield, but
the acceleration
the acceleration is there, man. He runs a 4.22 20-yard shuttle. The average for a center is 4.66. Squats 590 pounds. We broke the Iowa record for that. And this was in the article too, and I love that Bruce put this in, and credit to him. Donnie, you got to explain this, man. This is the most Iowa thing ever, but I feel like it's so impressive that I had to put it in. So at the Salon Beef Days in Iowa, he threw a 60-pound hay bale 14 feet in the air, which is 2 feet more than Tristan Wirfs, who won the 2019 competition, did. So Tyler Linderbaum threw 60 pounds of hay 14 feet in the air, and Tristan Wirfs only did 12 feet. So we mentioned Tristan Wirfs' high school wrestling. Well, also at the Salon Beef Days in Iowa, he threw 60 pounds of hay higher in the air. Than
this
Tristan
is
Wirfs
truly like the most like out
that is. Oh yeah.
Have you ever gone to that, Donnie? The Salon Beef Days?
No, I knew it was a thing. I've never gone to it, but I've actually known people who participated in it. So
Yeah, well, he's the champion right now. Tyler Linderbaum's a champion of the hay bale toss. And also, so that was all the athleticism stuff, which is absolutely ridiculous. And he should be first round prospect just for that. But he's been a freaking superstar for 3 years, too. Like, so he's a stud athlete and a stud player. Started as a defensive tackle, shifted to center, like you guys mentioned, and has been the best center I've ever seen, I think, in college football. Like, he's been, like Donnie mentioned, PFF's highest graded center for 2 years in a row now. He was the highest graded overall player this year. And in his first year at center, he was the 5th highest graded center in the country. Like a guy who just switched over to a new position, immediately dominated in the Big Ten, where you're facing really good defensive line. Like, this is not like maybe the Pac-12 or the ACC. No, this guy is going up against the best of the best. Probably not in the SEC. SEC's better, but second best conference in America, I would say, and he's still dominating at Iowa. Great balance. He's never on the ground unless he puts you there. And the athleticism, I think, shows up on zone blocking runs, gets the second and third level so quickly. And like we mentioned, that Kentucky video, even outruns his ball carrier sometimes. Like sometimes he sprints past the tight end. Or
yeah, like there was a play against Kentucky where they did a screen pass to a tight end Sam Laporta, and I posted it on the Boomer Bust TikTok. Shout out, plug the TikTok. Yep. And he was keeping up with a tight end, and Sam Laporta may not be the most athletic tight end ever.
He's a good tight end though. Like,
but he's
like
still
a
good tight end.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a solid potentially day 3 tight end, and he is keeping up with them and maybe just as fast as him, which is crazy.
Yeah. It's insane. And his hustle, I mean, you've seen there's other plays too. He's getting downfield with running backs, and you're like, dude, this guy's hustle's amazing. But Nick, we've been singing the praises for this guy. What are the weaknesses, if any, that you see with Tyler Linderbaum?
Well, I mean, it's the size. He's not like the biggest, and 290 is fine. The NFL, you can find success at center, but the only issue with that is he's probably just going to have to play center. Like, you cannot put this guy at guard. I see, stupid mock drafts all over the place on even like some well-known sites that have had this guy getting mocked as a guard, and it's not going to happen. Like, at 290 pounds, you're not playing guard at the next level. And as physically gifted as he is of an athlete, there is no reason for anyone to ask him to change his weight, because you don't want to mess with that. Like, you have a 100th percentile athlete, 101st percentile athlete here at the position of center. Like, he's not changing his weight. So he's going to play center. He has to play center. You can't put him in any other position. He's a center.
Yeah, just echoing everything he said. He's a bit smaller than the average center. Do I care? No, I really don't care, because we've seen smaller centers go into the league and have had dominant careers. But I do agree, he's not a guard in the NFL, and I know a lot of especially Giants fans are like, yeah, we should get him and then put him at guard. And I'm like, no, that's a mistake. Keep him at center, and automatically he's most likely going to be one of the best centers in the league. So those are really the only two weaknesses. There's nothing else really wrong with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys, the 290 pounds, so he's the average height, but 13 pounds lighter. The average center is 303 pounds, and it shows up, I think, a little bit. Now, of course, like, this guy's been unbelievably dominant his whole career, but sometimes when he gets beat, you can see it against bigger nose tackles. Like, nose tackles can sometimes walk him back. I've never seen Tyler Linderbaum, and maybe someone could prove me wrong and find a clip, but from what I've watched, I've never seen him on the ground by a defensive lineman putting him there. So, but he can be walked back sometimes, though. So I think his anchor is really good, but he can be walked back. Hand placement, I think, is sometimes an issue. I think it's still very clean overall, like Donnie mentioned before, but he is prone to shooting his hands too early, which allows defenders to swat them away when they do get a pressure on him, which is rare, like we mentioned, but when they do, it's usually because he's shooting his hands too early and they go around him. I think he's good, not great in a gap scheme. So I think this is a guy, obviously, we've been saying how freakishly athletic he is. You want him in a zone blocking scheme, man. Get him on the move, get him finding those second and third level defenders, and just take out guys. So in a gap scheme, he's been good, not great, but in a zone scheme, he's been absolutely dominant. But Donnie, overall, what do you think about Linderbaum? How high would you take him? This guy is a center, so how high would you take him in this draft? Where does he rank on your board? His player comp, team fit, and like, how good of a prospect are we talking about here with Tyler Linderbaum?
Well, to answer your last question, I mean, like, I've said this multiple times on this podcast. I hate the word generational, but this is it. This is it. This is the Penei Sewell, the Kyle Pitts, the Trevor Lawrence of centers. This guy is the generational talent of center. I've never seen a center prospect as good. And yes, I'm a bit younger. I'm only 19 years old, so I've only been scouting for about 5 or 6 years. But either way, no center prospect has ever come close to this guy. And I mean, not at all. Nobody's even touched this guy as a prospect when it comes to centers. Obviously, Quentin Nelson, maybe a better prospect, but when it comes to centers, nobody's touched this guy. Currently, this may sound high. He's currently number 4 on my big board, my number 1 offensive lineman, only behind Aiden Hutchinson, Kyle Hamilton, and Kayvon Thibodeau. Yes, I think he's a better prospect than Derek Stingley Jr., and that's mainly just because the potential for Derek Stingley Jr. to bust is a lot bigger because of the injury concerns. Tyler Linderbaum doesn't have any injury concerns. So I will take my shot with that high floor because he's more likely going to work out than Stingley. And I'd imagine Stingley is going to work, but there is that small chance that he may not work out because of those injuries. So that's why I think he's the 4th best player in this class. Team fits. Anyway, man, like if you need a center, this is the guy. Like this is the guy. He automatically improves your run game. He automatically improves your pass protection in the inside. Everything you want from a center, he has it. Player comp, I'd imagine we're all going to have this. It's Jason Kelce, man. Like, this guy is Jason Kelce. He's a bit undersized, but very, very dominant his entire career. Jason Kelce has been consistently a top 5 center in the NFL, and I'd imagine that's what Tyler Linderbaum is going to be. He may pull a Creed Humphrey and go in the NFL and just be the best center in the league. He might. And that's not even a crazy thing to say because of how dominant this guy's been. I mean, it's like Max said. He was graded as the number 1 center for 2 years in a row and was graded as a top 5 center for every single year of his career. Like, this guy goes from defensive tackle and in one offseason goes to center and is the 5th best center in the country.
Yep.
That's insane. That is crazy. Like, that is just ridiculous. Like, this guy has no previous experience playing offensive line, switches to center in one off season, boom, he's a monster. Like, I don't understand it. So where would I take him? I don't know if I would take him in the top 5, but I mean, if you did, I wouldn't be mad. Giants at 5, I don't think is the craziest thing, but I doubt it's going to happen. But at worst, this guy is a top 10 pick, and if he falls out of the top 10, that's a disgrace.
Yeah, I mean, he's my number 1 interior offensive lineman in this draft class. Obviously, number 1 center. He's going to be my 3rd offensive lineman on my board, behind Charles Cross and Evan Neal. There's a big mismatch of those 4 guys. Like they're all like arguably kind of in the same tier. My 10th player on my board, and that's really just a positional value thing. I still think he's, great, and I wouldn't have any problem with someone going higher. Like if the Giants wanted to take him at 7, I think that's fine. I think the Jets at 10 is like a good pick as well. Falcons will need a center at 8. Denver, although they took minors last year, he might end up playing guard, and they might decide they need a center as well. Like all those teams, it's potential. The Vikings, they need to finally realize that the Garrett Radbury pick didn't work out. Maybe they take center. I think his floor, to be honest with you, is probably Baltimore at 14. I think if he makes the 14, like Baltimore should just snap him up because their interior offensive line has been terrible, quite frankly. And the run game has suffered ever since Lamar Jackson's MVP season because of it. So I think that's his floor. The comp is Jason Kelce. I kind of alluded to it earlier in the video. Smaller center. I think the other thing that besides the size that is a great comparison, though, is just how good Jason Kelce is on the move, pulling at the second level, getting in space, movement ability, and blocking on the move. It's similar with Tyler Linderbaum. That's the player you're getting by taking him. And there are teams like the Eagles who already have a Hall of Fame center and Kelce, who are thinking, oh, maybe we'll just take Linderbaum because if Kelce goes away and retires, maybe we just have run it back for 10 years.
Yeah, they have 3 first-round picks too. Like he might be there. But Tyler Linderbaum 5 overall for me, number 1 interior offensive lineman. Like I do my board positional value too, and this is just a guy that I'm like, man, I really do think like he is the best prospect in this draft. Like if you're taking positional value completely out of the equation, just saying who is the best at their respective positions, Tyler Linderbaum I think is a clear number 1 prospect in this draft. But he plays center, which drops him over to number 5, and what is probably a weaker draft, which is why he's that high at number 5. Like maybe in a stronger draft like last year, probably a little bit lower, probably back half top 10, if not in the teens. But in this draft, I would say top 5 player, number 1 offensive lineman overall. Like I said, number 5 overall behind only Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Kyle Hamilton, Derek Stingley, not in that order. I believe I have Hamilton at 2 and Kayvon at 3 and Stingley at 4. and the best interior offensive line prospect that we've seen since Quentin Nelson in 2018. Like, that is just how good he was and how Quentin Nelson went 6 overall. And they're like, wow, it was really high for a guard, like a guy who was not going to play tackle. Well, Quentin Nelson is a superstar, and we've seen him be the superstar type player. I think the Colts have no qualms about taking him that high because of how good he's been for them. So I think how we viewed Quentin Nelson back then is kind of similar to how we view this guy now at center. Generational prospect at center, I think for sure. Absolutely dominant from day one. Ridiculous athleticism for the position. Like I said, best prospect in the draft. And you saw last year a guy who actually regrettably was a little bit lower on, Creed Humphrey, who was just ridiculous athlete. I think he tested as a 100th percentile athlete, which I was a little surprised by. And he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, and like Donnie mentioned, was the best center in the league by a good margin this year. So I do think it is possible for Tyler Linderbaum, who has been absolutely freaking dominant for 3 years now, to go into the NFL and just continue that. And maybe like he and Creed Humphrey could just literally be the future of the center position right there. Those two leading it for years to come. Because I do think both of them are fantastic. Player comp, this is going to be the easiest I've ever made graphics for these. Jason Kelce is the player comp. I had it in the preseason. I'm keeping it now. You guys mentioned Kelce also a little bit lighter, same height, 6'3", but also he's 295 pounds. So he's still 8 pounds lighter than the average. And, he's a little bit heavier than Linderbaum, was 290. But that size that Kelce and Linderbaum have, let them get to the second and third level with that stellar athleticism. And I think that's why they are so dominant. Nick, you mentioned how Kelce is just so good on the move, man. And I know this is a very lofty comparison. And I'm not a huge fan of making these lofty comparisons. I know Donnie loves making Hall of Fame
Absolutely.
Yes. Donnie's favorite thing is making Hall of Fame comparisons.
He's going to be the best offensive lineman to ever touch NFL grass.
Yes, that's exactly what Donnie said right there. It's a very lofty comparison, but of all the players that we've done and will do, I think he's earned it. I think this is a guy you're like, no, like if he busts, I got to reevaluate everything I've learned at scouting players. Where it's like, I don't know what I missed, but something I missed. I really think this is a future superstar at the center position.
When the Austin Galeism comes in, that players don't bust, teams bust. So if he busts, it's probably a team.
It's not. I really think the only question, like, it shouldn't be, oh, will this guy be a boom or a bust, roll credits? The real question should be, how much do you value the center position and how much do you want a center on your team? And that's an issue because I've seen a lot of mock drafts, including some at PFF who love doing positional value and everything. Austin Gale had him going, I think, 23. Like, this is a guy who I've seen other big boards fall to. He might fall. And I know Donnie said it would be a disgrace if he doesn't go in the top 10. I agree with you. However, I do think there's a shot.
He might.
I think there's a shot that not only top 10, I could see him fall out of the top 15. Like, I think this is a guy who go late teens, maybe even early 20s, which we're going to look back and be like, wow, he was the best player in the draft,
Yeah, I think if he makes it into the 20s, I'll let you go. Then it's an issue for me.
If he falls to 23 to the Cardinals, I don't care that we have Rodney Hudson. You draft that guy.
Yeah. The issue, that's an issue, though, because like this is like, so quarterback is different because quarterback, you have is by far the most valuable position in sports. Center is the same as quarterback in that there's only one on the field. You only have one center on the field. And quarterback is different because of positional value, but center is like a little bit lesser in positional value. And all of a sudden teams will be like, hey, we got a good one. We don't need this guy. We need like an edge. We need another edge. We need another corner, another receiver, another tackle, whatever. You only have one center, man. And a lot of teams could just completely write this guy off their board altogether, which is why, this guy is going to have a very limited number of teams that are going to actually even look at this guy, which is why he might fall despite being such a superstar prospect. So the Giants, Broncos, Vikings, Saints, like these are just some teams that I saw him being mocked to, and I like the fit a little bit, but this guy can fall. And I know we're singing his praises. I think he is the best prospect regardless of positional value or irregardless of positional value. But you got to look at it and just say, you know what? He might fall. So don't be shocked if, this guy is such a superstar prospect but still falls in the NFL draft. So that's what we got on Donnie's boy, Tyler Linderbaum. What do you think about him? Because obviously we are extremely high on Tyler Linderbaum. Do you see a little bit of negatives in the state? Maybe a little bit lower on Linderbaum. Do you think that a center has no place? Are you Viking Skull and think he has no place in the first round, second round, whatever, because he's a center? Let us know in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to follow our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at BoomerBustDraft. We're on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast as well. keep leaving comments in the comment section. This is the second straight video we did now where a lot of it is because of you guys. So we wanted to get all the big prospects, like the top 4 or 5 that we see everywhere. Now we're getting to the nitty gritty. Now we're saying, hey, what do you guys want to see? Like we'll cover them more in depth. We're working on our big boards right now to get a new one for you. So let us know who you want in the comment section below. From Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons, I'm Max Chadwick. Have a great night.